Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on this DC universe coming our way. And over the weekend, we heard that there would be a news drop of some sort and sort of like some clarification on certain projects upcoming in the DCU. You know, ones that were already announced and possibly some new ones as well. And over the past, 24 hours, or maybe just a bit over 24 hours or so ago, that is exactly what we got. So we'll be going over this pretty sizable news drop. I don't think anything in this is actually jaw dropping, to be honest. Like, oh my god, look at this news, how good's this? But it's a lot. So some of it's actually not too surprising, to be completely honest, some of the updates. But then, of course, there are some of those new projects that seem to be filling in a gap that was noticeable since Gunn and Safran took over DC Studios, like a certain niche, if you want to put it. But we will be breaking it up into completed projects, projects in production, and then the rest after that, including updates on previously announced projects and then those new ones. But of course, throughout the video, be sure to let me know in the comments section down below your thoughts on this stuff, what gets you excited, what makes you go, I'm not too sure, let me know your thoughts down there. And of course, go on to enjoy the video, drop a like, it takes 2 seconds. So the first thing to talk about is just the stuff in post-production. So we know what two projects these are. Those are Superman and Peacemaker Season 2. Both of those are deep into post-production, which means pretty much they're ready to watch. So we have Superman coming out on July 11th, 2025. Of course, we knew that. Peacemaker Season 2 was rumored for August, and that's what they're saying now. They're aiming for August. So that when aiming, it maybe means like maybe they think maybe Superman's going really well in theaters and they can keep it going in theaters for a bit longer. Oh, but then again, you wouldn't move it that late, would you? They'd have to decide by probably May or June, probably when Peacemaker's 100% coming out, like a specific date. So I don't know, maybe if they're really confident with Superman performing well, they might push Peacemaker back a month or something, just in case Superman has a longer theater run. I don't know. They'll probably try and, even if it's just August, they might go late August just to be safe, because that still gives you like 6 weeks roughly of Superman being in the theaters. People can watch that and then they can jump into Peacemaker Season 2. In regards to the stuff in production, of course, we know that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow has been filming for a while, and they're around halfway through the film's production. That, of course, is releasing on June 26, 2026, so just under a year after Superman comes out. And of course, the other one that's in production just recently is Lanterns. That production only officially begun over the past few weeks. But here's the update. We had heard that they sort of weren't sure where Lanterns was going to go. Was it going to come before Supergirl? Was it going to come after? With a lot of the suggestions being it was going to come after and be very much like what Peacemaker Season 2 is to Superman. So it would come out maybe a month or two after Supergirl. But now they're saying that it's aiming to release in early 2026. So we don't know necessarily chronological wise, like timeline wise, how it fits in. Does it really matter? That's a wait and see, but that's an interesting update. But the next thing that was noted was on this whole greenlighting projects thing that Gunn has emphasized more than once, and he did confirm that no project will get a green light, might I say, until he and Peter Safran are satisfied with a completed screenplay. With him saying it's hard enough making a good movie with a good script, it's almost impossible making a movie with a script that you're writing on the run. Now, I think this is where we've heard that Gunn doesn't really want to acknowledge any of the reports. So in this thing, we'll talk in a second, there's movies that he had not really acknowledged yet that now he's acknowledging because they weren't greenlit. I think when something's in development and stuff like that, I think the projects are going to have to be acknowledged if people have questions about them or where they place. You can not really want to greenlight something until it's got a completed screenplay, which makes sense because that's usually the case. That's pretty much by definition. But I think maybe some acknowledgement of projects as they're going along, regardless of whether they've got a full screenplay or not, is warranted. But I mean, the greenlight thing with, needing a completed screenplay, that makes 100% sense because that's literally what it means. The next thing is that Alan Tudyk will not play Clayface in the Clayface film since it wasn't his primary role. He just did a couple of little voice acting things in that. Of course, he voiced the character in Harley Quinn, but that, in regards to the Creature Commandos where Clayface shows up, it's a little bit. And also, was that meant to be the same Clayface? I don't know. But of course, his primary role is Dr. Phosphorus in Creature Commandos. That's meant to be his primary role, at least, in this DCU at this point. And there was a brief update on the Batman Part 2 given out, and also the question of a possible Season 2 of The Penguin. Firstly, with the Batman Part 2, from Peter Safran and James Gunn, they say that Matt Reeves has yet to turn in a full script, but what we have read so far is incredibly encouraging, which, make of that what you will. I mean, when the script comes, I guess. They're set to start filming by the end of the year, so it shouldn't be too far along in regards to being completed. But on the Penguin, Peter Safran said, we don't know. There are a lot of moving pieces, probably most important, Colin, as in Colin Farrell himself. Now, there was another thing I saw just before I made this video, where apparently Colin Farrell isn't too, you know, not too, in love with the idea of a second season of the Penguin. I think that's more just because of the contained story, and maybe that's the best way to leave like a focus on the character. Of course, him showing up in other Batman movies makes sense, but in regards to a focus, one of those limited series was enough. But speaking of Batman, the DCU, that continues into Batman Brave and the Bold, and they did confirm that it remains in active development despite rumors about maybe it being scrapped, with Gunn and Safran confirming that Matt Reeves' universe exists in its own timeline, and Robert Pattinson will not be reprising his role as Batman for the Brave and the Bold film. But there is a possibility that the DCU version of Batman will show up before his titular debut, with Gunn saying, "I wouldn't rule anything out. He could show up in something else, but the actor doesn't exist yet." I mean, there's rumors that maybe they might do like a World's Finest thing, because they got to wait until Batman Part 2 comes out before Brave and the Bold can come out. And they're going to leave at least probably an 18-month gap between that. So what's Batman Part 2? It's like end of 2027. So like what, middle of 2029, possibly the earliest, summertime maybe for Brave and the Bold. What, 4 years away? Like by that time, maybe there might be another movie to come out where you can actually include Batman. But there is another movie that we'll talk about in a second, which probably might be where we see Batman first. It seems pretty likely. But it's not this one, but we'll talk about this. Dynamic Duo, which is like the mixed animations, like slow motion, puppetry, live action, animation, like multiple things. That's currently in pre-production, which makes sense because there's a lot of work that's going to have to go into that film. But it will be, of course, an animated feature film about Dick Grayson and Jason Todd in their early days as Robin, with Safran saying it provides a kind of perfect on-ramp for family audiences into the world of Gotham. So this will obviously be, targeted at families. It won't be an overly dark film, you wouldn't have to think at the very least. Now, Blue Beetle's been a big thing because we know that's one thing that's carrying on from the DCEU into the DCU. And the animated series is in active development, not production, active development, with Safran expecting the executive producers of Angel Manuel Soto and Gareth Dunnett Alcocer, I think that's how you pronounce it, to present the project for a possible green light pretty soon. So it probably just means they're roughing up, or roughing the edges, if you want to, or getting the rough edges off the story and presenting what they have, at least for a first season and stuff like that. A lot of people think this is like undercutting it because it was a live action movie and now all of a sudden it's going to be just an animated series. But I think this is where maybe there was a deal made where maybe Gunn wanted to include Blue Beetle, but maybe the box office performance wasn't that great. So Warner Brothers was like, okay, well, we'll meet you down the middle. So this is maybe where, you're better with something rather than nothing, I guess. You can sort of continue the story. And if it's successful, then maybe you can revisit the character in live action, whether it's just joining a team or maybe being a focus. But here's the first new project. So My Adventures with Green Lantern has officially been greenlit. This, of course, will be animated. I say of course just because we've got lanterns, so there's not going to be another live action thing. So this will be animated. It's going to be following high school student Jessica Cruz, who has her life upended when a power ring falls from the sky and chooses her to be its champion. Things get even worse when more debris from the Lantern's ancient space war arrives, along with their alien foes. Jake White is executive producing and Stephanie Gonzaga is co-executive producer. And this will be set, since the name sort of makes sense, in the same continuity as the My Adventures with Superman show. Now, my only thing about this is that Jessica Cruz is a character that has a pretty dark backstory, pretty messed up one, to be completely honest. And I highly doubt the show is going to even touch upon that, or they might do a really, really, really toned down version of it. I'm not too sure. But then again, the My Adventures with Superman plays around with the canon a lot, so I expect this show to play around with the canon a lot as well. It just will be interesting to see is, are there other Green Lanterns on Earth? Is she the first one? Is there only maybe one before her? That'll be interesting to see. And also Jessica Cruz is usually a lot of people think of Simon Baz because they were introduced around the same time. So maybe he might be in the show as well. But another show that was greenlit, a brand new show, is DC Superpowers. This, once again, animated. And this will take place at the Alliance School for Heroes and focuses on new students, Lightning, a Flash. This could easily be a Jesse Chambers, could easily be Avery Ho. It doesn't say the Flash, it just says Flash. So Lightning, Flash, Plastic Man, Aquagirl, Green Lantern again, and Terra, who level up their powers under the supervision of Principal Martian Manhunter in the hopes of one day graduating and becoming the next generation of Earth's defenders. Out of the gate, I think this is going to be a very kid-focused show. It sort of gives off that the superhero girl show, was it DC Superhero Girls or whatever that show is, where they're in high school. I think this is just going to be a very mixed version of that. Maybe not as kiddie. Maybe it's going for 8 to 14 age range or something like that, but in the vein of that for the most part. And the last new show that was greenlit is that of Starfire. This will be once again animated, and this will serve as an origin story that follows Starfire's adventures after she uses an ancient spaceship she discovers on her home planet of Tamarin to escape and explore the stars. Along the way, she'll meet space biker Crush, who is Lobo's daughter, plant-loving Fern, and the magical princess Amethyst of Gemworld, which is like a deep cut from like, what, the 80s or 90s or something like that. Together, they will uncover the deepest reaches of the DC universe, save space dolphins, surf technicolor nebulas, and boldly soar into the unknown. Out of the gate, this is going to be like a Adventure Time Steven Universe show. I think that's clearly what they're appealing for here. The description says it. Just even like the artwork they use, that artwork looks like those shows. That's clearly what they're going for here. But once again, it'll appeal, and this is probably like a bit of a more broad thing, because I think that Steven Universe and Adventure Time, they're a bit more of a broad audience and stuff. It's not just kids, but kids can enjoy it at the same time, along with adults or just maybe like teenagers. Next up, Sergeant Rock has not officially been announced, and Daniel Craig was never attached to star in the titular role, apparently, with Peter Safran saying, "We never met with Daniel, he was just an idea." Of course, this is a movie that's going to happen. It'll just be interesting to see who they cast, because the rumor was Jeremy Allen White might fall in there, but then Daniel Craig was like an idea, so it'll just be interesting to see like who they go for, because I think you need like a mid-40s probably Sergeant Rock, or at least someone in his 40s a bit more, so, or late, oh no, you could probably do late 30s if you really wanted to, but I don't know, I think like mid-40s is probably the way to go, like a bit of experience. But the next one is probably the biggest one, the biggest announcement of the day, because they officially announced that it's happening and they're acknowledging it, and that's Teen Titans. That's officially in active development, and it's briefly described as, quote, a group of young superheroes, including Nightwing, Cyborg, and the aforementioned Starfire. With Gunn saying it was something that Anna Nagura was really impassioned about, and she turned over an amazing script for us. She's fiddling with that now, but it's definitely not a finished script. And I mean, this isn't too surprising. We knew this was happening. The most interesting thing is that it's Nightwing that's going to be in there, so maybe opens the door for it not really being the crew from the animated show, which was heavily rumored. So it opens the door to Wonder Girl being there, Kid Flash, or maybe even just Wally as the Flash in there, maybe like the early days into him being that character. So interesting. That opens the doors a lot. So I'm intrigued to see where they go with that now, because now it's Nightwing in there, not Robin. So food for thought. Next one, script for the Deathstroke and Bane project written by Matthew Orton is in the works at DC Studios, with Gunn saying it is something kind of like a Deathstroke Bane story, which makes no sense to me. I don't see this movie happening. Honestly, I would be shocked if this movie happens. Let's be completely honest. That thing isn't happening, I don't think. Speaking of things that people don't think will happen, but I think will, Paradise Lost remains in active development. I think this is just a Wonder Woman issue, them not knowing where they're going to bring up Wonder Woman. They probably want to do Paradise Lost pretty like close, might I say, to the debut of Wonder Woman whenever that happens. But this is one where, I mean, they can take another 4 years for it to come out. I don't think it impacts the universe in any major way. The next one is that Booster Gold is moving forward in development after a, quote, particular showrunner / creator who had expressed interest in the series, but they ultimately moved on. Now, the rumor probably back quarter of last year that it was Danny McBride who was interested in it. Of course, he was moving on from the Righteous Gemstones. That's got its last season coming up, so it would make a lot of sense that he would jump to a new project. And apparently, him and his team from that show were attached to Booster Gold. Now he hasn't named the person here, but this is one, once again, I don't think it's like at the tip of the important stuff in regards to their storyline. Booster Gold's very flexible in regards to when you can introduce the character and also his impact on the storyline. So unless he's meant to be a main player in whatever they got planned, they don't need to rush this one. Waller, that's meant to be a show that was rumored to be filming at the end of this year, but it is going down, quote, a bumpy road and struggling to land the right script, which is interesting, but it might just be because of like maybe the subject matter in there and it having to carry on from a Peacemaker and maybe a Creature Commandos, maybe figuring out exactly not only where to pick up the character, like where to pick up the character, particularly like what's she doing and what happens to her early on, but where you finish with the character. Like that's an important thing as well. The third last thing to touch upon is that Swamp Thing has been, quote, stuck in limbo while James Mangold has been focused on his biopic, a complete, I don't know if I can speak English, which, we sort of knew. He himself had sort of touched upon that, like he hadn't really been thinking about anything else except that a complete unknown movie, but he also has a Star Wars movie that he's meant to be doing. So the big question is, what comes first? I think I have a feeling he'll probably do that Star Wars one, but then again, Star Wars is in that weird phase where they're announcing things, but they're not making anything. So we'll wait and see. But I don't know. Is Swamp Thing a vital movie for this storyline in this DCU in its first chapter? I mean, it's called Gods and Monsters, so you'd assume so, but maybe it's flexible. The second last thing to talk about is the Authority. Now, this has been a big thing because there's been really no movement on it. There's been rumors that it's going to be going to an animated film or something like that, rather than being live action like originally intended. But a part of this announcement or this talk that Gunn and Safran gave is that the Authority has been moved to the back burner, with Safran saying it's a very, very big movie if you're going to do the Authority properly, and some story elements perhaps that are in Superman and some of the other films that we fast track step a little bit on the Authority, with Gunn adding that the script also had a harder time coming along, so the film hasn't been as much of a priority because it has been subsumed by everything from The Brave and the Bold to Paradise Lost. I mean, I remember when they first announced all those projects, the Authority was the one that stood out like a sore thumb as the one that, why are they making that? Like, you could easily include the Authority in another film rather than giving them their own film, because it's going to be, it's essentially like doing a Justice League movie, essentially. So, I don't know. Maybe the animated thing is true. They're saying that the script isn't coming along as well as they thought. Maybe it's a combination of things, but I don't think they'll cancel it. I don't think they would. I don't think they'd cancel it, but I don't know. I feel like this is meant to play off Superman and be an important part of the first chapter. So maybe maybe what they're hinting there is they might take some of the story elements that were meant to be in there and sprinkle them in other films. Maybe that's a wait and see. But speaking of the DCU plan, that was the final thing that we're going to talk about, and sort of one of the things that was noted, but it was sort of vague. So Gunn says they mapped out a 6-year plan that tells a wider story, resulting in a project akin to Marvel Studios' Avengers films, though each individual project works as its own thing. Quote, it isn't like they're chapters of an overall story, they're characters that are part of an overall story. Now, I saw there was another quote where it was meant to be like Endgame-like. I don't know if you can do an Endgame-like event in just 6 years of storytelling where potentially we don't know what's happening with Batman, what's happening with Flash, what's happening with Wonder Woman. And I know you don't need those characters to do a big story, but you think, okay, well, you think the Justice League would be there in some form or some shape or form, you'd think. So, I don't know. Maybe he just thinks maybe the main thing is just an Avengers style film rather than Endgame style, which I saw, some, things using because it was quoted. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't expect them to do a massive thing, but just something that culminates the previous 6 years and the storytelling done there. And it'll be interesting to see where it starts to unfold a lot. We know that Lanterns is reportedly meant to have a big part of that. We don't know if Superman will. It's a wait and see. But, hopefully, some of the stuff that's a bit more worrying, like the Authority. Authority is probably the big one just because it was a movie. And you expect all the main stuff to happen in the movies. So, yeah, hopefully they sort of sort that out, because I feel like that's probably the worrying thing there. I know there's Waller and Booster Gold and stuff, but I feel like they're flexible. I feel like the Authority is the one that they're probably concerned the most about, and that people have been asking about as well, seeing it's, has a character of the Authority is in the Superman film. So, yeah, hopefully we get better news about that. But I think this might be the last update we get really in regards to all this stuff until Comic-Con. I think Comic-Con in, the end of July, we'll probably get a Supergirl trailer, or at least like a teaser, or like one of those like first look sort of things they do at Comic-Cons, and maybe something that with lands, and then they might flesh out more information about some of the, maybe not those like animated shows, but maybe like Waller, maybe some with the Authority, Swamp Thing. They might flesh out more of that stuff at Comic-Con. So yeah, maybe this is like the midterm report, if you want to put it, that they did for DC Studios, just so you're not waiting until Comic-Con to get anything. Because they didn't really announce anything big here. The biggest thing is probably Teen Titans being confirmed and this stuff with the Authority, to be completely honest. And maybe that plan that we just mentioned there, like 6-year plan, but we assume that they're going to be doing something like that anyway. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be awesome if you could drop a like and show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions and everything we went over in this video. Always curious to read what you guys are thinking. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.